What's going on, duelists? It's your boy Nick, bringing you today on the channel an update to my branded Draco Tale deck for the the Chronicles, the Fallen and the Virtuous structure deck release. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh content mainly focused around rogue and casual decks alike. If that's the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh that you're interested in, then I highly encourage you to smash that subscribe button. We are currently working our way to 3,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. So, Albaz, or the branded lore in general, just got a brand new structure deck today at time of recording. It's available at both your OTS stores and your local Targets, Walmarts, and whatnot. It MSRP is for around $20 to $22, and it is a 50-card structure deck, basically comprised of branded Despia, and features some brand new cards, one of which you can see here is a brand new fusion monster. And honestly, it's never been a better time to play branded. We are actually even getting more support in the future in Burst Protocol, which is our next core set. And I'm just absolutely excited. Branded is one of my favorite decks. I think the artwork and the lore behind the story is so cool. And like I said, I wanted to update my branded Draco Tale deck post-structure, featuring some of the new cards. And honestly, I think the deck is just incredible. Now, this is a 60-card deck list, which I know some duelists are opting to not play 60. They want to condense it, play 50 or even 45. Personally, I'm still a huge fan of the 60-card variant. While I am aware that sometimes it can be a little inconsistent, I just think that the 60-card variant, for me personally, is just the most fun, and it's honestly the way that I prefer to play the deck. But obviously, you know, just take this deck list as a guide for your own branded Draco Tale list. Again, you also don't need to play Draco Tale in the deck. You could honestly play pure branded, but I really do like the Draco Tale cards, and I think that branded Draco has a higher ceiling and more ways to push into established boards than pure branded does. Again, my own opinion. But with the intro and everything out of the way, we are obviously going to dive headfirst into the deck list, of course, which is a 60 card, like I mentioned. So we'll start off with the monster lineup, like we normally do. So we have 3 copies of Albion the Shrouded Dragon. This is basically Fallen of Albaz, you know, 4, 5, and 6. He's pretty much a Foolish Burial Goods and an Upstart Goblin all in one card. He foolishes branded spell traps from deck to grave, or Albaz himself, and then lets you draw a card by placing himself in the bottom of the deck. He can do this effect from the graveyard as well, except you don't get the draw, and then his name is treated as Albaz while on the field or in the graveyard. So overall, just a consistency card / extender for you. So you play 3 copies. Then, of course, we play 3 copies of the poster child himself, Albaz. This card, while not a starter for you, you know, it's basically just super poly on legs. Obviously, a very crazy card because now there's so many different things you can fuse off with on your opponent's side of the field, because Albaz has a bunch of different targets that he can make now, especially with the new dragon that came out in the structure deck, which unironically isn't even a dragon. I think it's a beast type, but we'll get to that when we get to the extra deck. Of course, you play 3 copies of Aluber, the Jester of Despia, pretty much your searcher for all of your branded spell traps. Pretty self-explanatory there. Very good normal summon for you. Then we're on 2 copies of Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous, 1 copy of Guiding Quem the Virtuous, followed by 1 copy of Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. I think the 2 1-in-1 ratio for the purposes of this 60-card deck specifically is perfect. Cartesia just being an extender out of the hand and allowing you to fusion summon helps dodge targeted interaction on your starters. Quem just being a Foolish Burial for you and a way to recover your Albaz or any monster that mentions it from grave. And then Incredible Ecclesia kind of being the worst of the 3 in my opinion, but she's basically an E-Telly for Albaz from deck. And she can also special summon herself going second if your opponent controls more monsters than you do. So I think the 2 1-in-1 ratio has been perfect for me. I would not change this ratio. Incredible Ecclesia is not mandatory to play it, but again, with the new fusion we got in the structure deck, there are some benefits to playing this, and she's honestly not terrible, especially in a 60-card build. I think you can find the space for her, but if you're trying to play more of a condensed deck list, like something closer to 50 or under that number, then I don't think Incredible Ecclesia is worth playing, in my opinion. Moving on, though, we have 1 copy of Spriggan's Kit, followed by 1 copy of Tri-Brigade Mercourier. Kit just being an additional, like, pseudo-starter for you / extender, and then Mercourier just being an archetypal hand trap of sorts, being very good. Also, when Mercourier gets banished, allowing you to search for Albaz or any monster that mentions it is obviously very good, too. Now moving on to our Bestial package, 1 copy of the Bestial Lubellion, followed by a playset of the Bestial Saronir. Bestial Saronir, I think, is the best Bestial to play in Branded because it directly synergizes with your deck as far as his graveyard effect is concerned. Because when Saronir is sent to grave by any means, he lets you Foolish Burial a branded spell trap from deck to grave, which is a very crazy effect. So Saronir kind of doubles as engine for you while also being non-engine, which I think is very cool. And then obviously you have Lubellion here that you can pitch to search for Saronir, which is obviously very strong. Now that wraps up the branded monsters themselves. Now we're going to be diving into our Dracotail monsters or Dracotail package. And I'm choosing to play a larger package of these. So I'm on 3 Fimena, 3 Mululu. I'm on the 1 Frixel, who is newly released out of the Doom of Dimensions core set. And then we're also on 1 copy of Lucius, 1 Urgula, followed by 1 copy of Pan. So I'm actually playing the extended package of Dracotails here. And personally, I think that, again, the Dracotails give this deck a much higher ceiling and more ways to break boards going second, which I think is really strong. Fimena just being a polymerization from the hand into any dragon or spellcaster fusion as long as the material's correct is absolutely insane. Mululu, again, just being another dark dragon monster, kind of functions like a Cartesia in a way. And then you have Frixel, who's just a crazy light spellcaster. Frixel's a very good bridge. You can use Branded Fusion, dump Albaz, dump Frixel, make Albion the Branded Dragon, and now bridge into your Dracotail cards. And then you have Lucius, obviously, who's just a consistency card and pseudo-starter for Dracotail, along with Urgula and Pan. Or basically just engine requirements. Obviously, all the Dracotail monsters, when they're sent to grave as fusion material, let you set Dracotail spells and traps for free. And obviously, those spells and traps are very, very strong. So I think playing this package, especially an extended package like this, benefits the deck in so many ways, especially for the 60 card version, because you actually have the space to accommodate this extended package. And I think it just does such a great job at applying a lot of pressure for very little investment as far as, I'm concerned. And like I said, I just think all of these cards are extremely high quality cards, and I just like the synergies, between Dracotail and Branded overall. I mean, Dracotail is just a bunch of dragons and spellcasters that help facilitate what Branded already wants to do, which is fusion summon as many times as possible. And Dracotail just, exaggerates that tenfold. So I think playing the extended Dracotail package has been working out well for me. Again, like I said, I'm aware that a lot of duelists prefer to not play 60 cards, but I've been playing this at 60, and it's just been an absolute blast. So rounding out the last monster in the main deck is just triple Fuelos. I don't think you need to play a bunch of hand traps in this deck, to be fair, because this deck just does such a great job at breaking boards with its own engine that you don't really need to stifle your opponent, if at all. You're very capable at going second, not drawing any hand traps, letting your opponent combo, and then just breaking their board with just your pure engine, which I think is crazy. And that's one of the things that I love about this deck. So Fuelos is the only, quote unquote, non-engine hand trap we play. You could argue that cards like Fimena and Bestial Saronir are non-engine hand traps, which they can be, but for the most part, Fimena and Saronir are more engine for you than anything. But anyway, that rounds out the monster lineup. Now moving into the spells. 2 Branded Fusion. Hopefully on the next ban list, Konami bumps this card to 3. This is the whole reason why you play this deck, because Branded Fusion is absolutely broken. Letting you use fusion material from your deck has always been pretty crazy as far as card advantage goes. Moving on, we have a playset of Branded Opening. This is basically emergency teleport for Aluber or Quem. while also giving you graveyard protection for if your fusion monsters would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish the opening instead. So it just makes your end boards even stickier and harder to break. Then we have 2 copies of High Spirits. High Spirits is just a very high quality starter / extender for you, allowing you to get access into additional cards while also dumping Albaz related fusions to the graveyard. I think is something that shouldn't be overlooked. I'm just choosing to play 2 of this though. I know some duelists max out, but personally, I feel like 2 is the perfect ratio, because sometimes you play this at 3 and you don't really want to see this card in multiples. Like the way I look at it is like 3 is too many and 1 is not enough. So I feel like 2 has always been the perfect ratio for me for this card. Then we have one of the brand new Fallen and the Virtuous quick play spells. This is brand new out of the Chronicles structure deck. This card is absolutely insane. It's always treated as a branded and a Dogmatica card. So it's searchable off of cards like Aluber, settable off of cards like Albion the Branded Dragon. And it allows you to do one of 2 things. You can either send a monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz from your extra deck to graveyard, and then target a face-up card on the field for cost. So note that it targets in Foolish Burials a fusion from your extra deck for cost, and then if it resolves, you destroy the face-up card you targeted. So you basically now have searchable removal with cards like Aluber. Like going second, you don't have to Aluber for Branded Fusion. You can Aluber for this and already start interacting with the board and forcing things out, which is just crazy. Or if you don't want to do that, the second effect states if you have an Ecclesia monster in your grave, which is why we play one of the Incredible Ecclesia, you can target a monster in either graveyard and special summon it to your field. Now, that effect isn't as relevant as the first one, but it is still a good option to have, and I think this card as a one-of is perfect. I think playing this as a one-of, if you're playing branded Dracotail, especially if you're on a bigger Dracotail package like I am, makes sense. I wouldn't max out on this card in a branded Draco build, simply because the extra deck is really tight and you don't play as many fusion targets to send for this as you would in like a pure branded deck. If you're playing pure branded, not including the Dracotail cards, then I think you max out on this. But I think in branded Dracotail, you can get away with just playing it as a one-of. And I just think this card's artwork is also really, really awesome. So definitely a great addition to the deck overall. Then, of course, we have 1 branded in red, 1 branded in white, 1 branded lost. Pretty typical for most branded decks. They're usually playing one-ofs of almost all of these. I've seen some lists start playing more copies of Lost, which I can understand why. Like, Lost plus any way to fuse is absolutely crazy, but personally, I just feel like 1 Lost is more than enough. It is searchable through multiple ways in the deck, and I just don't want to be in a scenario where I'm drawing duplicates of this card, because then obviously it starts to lose a lot of its luster, so to speak. But again, out of the structure deck, not a new card, but an alternate art of fusion deployment. I think this is one of the most beautiful alternate arts I've ever seen. Literally has Albaz and Cartesia on the art. I just think this card looks incredible. Like the structure deck, like this card alone is worth the purchase price of a structure. So fusion deployment is just basically crazy, allowing you to special summon either Cartesia or Albaz from the deck is very crucial. Then we play our Dracotail spells, which consists of 3 Ketu, followed by 3 Rahu. Ketu is obviously just the Rhoda and a Poly if you're going second. If you're going first, it's just the Rhoda. And then Rahu is basically branded Fusion 2.0, so that doesn't need any introduction. Both of these cards are very insane, and you get them for free off of your Dracotail graveyard effects. Then because, you know, like I mentioned, this deck can break boards with just Engine, but I still think you have to play at least some type of a breaker, so I'm choosing to main deck triple copies of Droplet. I think Droplet is absolutely insane right now, especially in this deck, because there's so many cheeky combos you can pull off and use Droplet to like dodge interaction on your cards, especially when you're going second. Like in the mirror match, for example, one of your biggest things is the opponent's Dracotail Flame, because they're going to hold Flame for either Branded Fusion or your Rahu. Well, if you activate Branded Fusion, they chain Flame. You could chain Droplet, sending your Branded Fusion for cost. The Flame loses its target, so it fizzles. You also negate a card in the process, and your Branded Fusion resolves. So, like, you know, I just think Droplet is just such a high-quality card. And plus, this is an out to Herald, which I think is your biggest threat right now in the format. I don't think you're really worried about anything else other than Herald because of, and it's not even for the Omni Negate that he's a problem, it's his banishing effect that he has while he's on the field. And then to round out the last spell, we do main deck one copy of Triple Tactic Talents. Moving into the traps, because I'm playing the extended Draco Tale package, you know, with like all the names, and this is also a 60 card list, I think it's correct for me to play all 3 traps. You know, yeah, these traps can be bricky or hinder you, but we're playing a 60 card deck, so the likelihood of you seeing these, especially in multiples, is pretty rare. And because we're playing like maxing out on the names for the most part, I think you have to max out on the traps to maximize the effectiveness of your Dracotail package. So you play 1 Flame, 1 Horn, 1 Sting. Flame being a spell negate, Horn being a compulsory evacuation device, Sting being like a double DD Crow. All 3 of these cards recycle your Dracotail cards that are banished or in your grave, and each one of them also gives you a draw on top of that. So these are very insane traps. And then to round out the last card in the deck, again, this is a 60 card list, we do play the 1 branded Retribution, which is obviously a very insane card as well, allowing you to cycle back your fusions to negate any spell, trap, or monster that would produce a special summon. And then in the graveyard, you can banish this to recycle a branded spell trap from grave back to your hand. So that wraps up the 60 card branded Dracotail deck list for the the Chronicles Fallen on the Virtuous structure deck. Now we're going to be moving into the extra deck, of which we are playing 2 copies of Dracotail Arthalion, or Big Art, as I like to call him, and then 1 copy of Dracotail Gulamel. I think because we are playing the extended Draco package in this deck, I think 2 Arthur or 2 Big Art and 1 Gulamel is the perfect ratio for you. I haven't needed additional copies of Arthur, and I've thought about cutting Gulamel, but at the end of the day, after doing more testing, I think you still need to play this as a one-of for certain lines, because Gulamel does come up, and sometimes you need additional Dracotail monsters to fuse into, because there are some hands that just produce Dracotail for you, and where you don't have access to branded stuff, and you're just basically playing a pure Dracotail deck in that point. So you need to be, kind of playing multiple Dracotail fusions. Arthur is obviously a very high quality card, bouncing stuff up to the number of materials used from hand, and then Gulamel is obviously really annoying for your opponent to have to constantly play around, giving you a pop every single time you activate a Dracotail card or effect. Moving into some of the branded specific fusions, we play 2 Albion the Branded Dragon. Pretty much goes without explanation. Most builds play 2 of this minimum. Then we have 1 copy of the Lubellion the Searing Dragon. Again, beautiful card. I was fortunate enough to be able to acquire a QCR print. And then speaking of being fortunate enough, I was also fortunate enough to be able to acquire a Starlight print of Mirror Jade, which both of these cards just look incredible. But this is pretty much your standard, branded fusion suite: 2 Albion, 1 Lubellion, 1 Jade. And then moving on to the remaining branded fusion monsters, we have one of the dragon that devours the Dogma. This card is very cool. It is the first Albaz fusion that actually utilizes more than 2 materials. This is a 3 material fusion needing Albaz plus a light or a dark plus any effect monster. So this makes using Albaz as a super poly effect even more beneficial going into a board, because now you can actually fuse off multiple cards instead of just 1, which is pretty cool. And then this card gains an additional benefit while you have an Ecclesia monster on your field or in your graveyard. This card gains 500 attack, and it's unaffected by other cards' effects, which is, I think, incredible. But the main effect that this card does is that if it's special summoned, you can shuffle up to 2 cards from any graveyards and or banishment into the deck. So this finally gives Branded the recursion it needed, because now, aside from using like Lubellion the Searing Dragon effect to cycle your banished cards back, you actually have this card that can do it, and it can cycle any card. So you can recover your banished Branded Retribution, for example, shuffle that back into the deck. You can get other fusion monsters out of your graveyard, put them back in the deck. Or if you don't need to recycle your own stuff, you can use this card's effect to disrupt your opponent, get stuff out of their graveyard or their banishment. And then if that wasn't crazy enough, this card also has an end phase effect, like most of the branded fusion monsters do, where during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can either add a Dogmatica or a Tri-Brigade card from the deck to your hand. So overall, I think this card is an incredible new fusion monster. It is a beast type, so it does give you a high spirits bridge using Spriggan's Kit, for example, which I think is pretty neat. And yeah, so that's all I have to say about that new fusion. We do play one copy of Albion the Sanctifier, one Titaniclad the Ash Dragon, and one Rinbrum the Striking Dragon for our remaining Albaz fusion targets. And then we are playing one copy of Grand Guganol the Dust Dragon, one copy of Secretarion Dragon, one copy of Chaos Star Source, and then rounding out the extra deck with one copy of Philia Regis. I would like to play a Despian Quiritis, but I just don't think I have the space in the extra deck. I'm not really sure what I would cut to accommodate it. And to be fair, with the uptick in fusion decks popping out, I think Quiritis' on-field effect is becoming less relevant. Because I just feel like for the next few weeks, I think you're going to see a lot of people trying out branded. So right now, I haven't really missed Quiritis. I mean, there's been like one or two games when I've kind of wished I had it, but for the most part, I think the deck's been playing fine without it. And Grand Guganol is still obviously a powerhouse because realistically, the main draw of this card is the first effect. But like I said, that's my ratio of extra deck stuff. Now we're going to be moving into the side deck. Again, side deck is always up to personal preference, but I've actually been cooking the side deck pretty hard. This is definitely a side deck I've given a lot of thought to for the current format. So I think side decking triple copies of Droll and Lockbird is definitely mandatory. There's even some argument that you could say you could mainboard this, which you probably could, but I think in the side is fine because you still have decks like Anamat, Ryziel, Mitsurugi variants running rampant, and I think Droll is just very good into those strategies. And it's also a high spirits bridge for you because it's a spellcaster, so there's additional synergy there. I do play two copies of Fantastical Dragon Phantasme in the sideboard. Again, you still have Malice kind of lurking about, and then like I mentioned before, you also have like Yummy, who's always going to make the Snatchy, of course. So I think there's a ton of matchups where Phantasme is relevant. Even into like Dracotail, they're generally making either the Blue Eyes Link or they're making the Hieratic Seals. So like, I think there's a lot of matchups where Phantasme comes up, and it's a Dark Dragon for you, which just has tons of synergy with the deck. We do side deck one Bestial Magnamut. Again, you bring this in against decks that it's good into. I think, Mitsurugi, Yummy, because they're lights and darks, you'll side into the one Magnamut, which I think is obviously very strong. And then we do play one of the light Jizukiru, the Star Destroying Kaiju in the side. And this is mainly to out Towers monsters like the Luna Light Liger Dancer. You can go Branded Fusion, dump Albaz, dump this, to make Titaniclad, for example. And then Titaniclad will actually have 3,900 attack, if my math is right, and it's unaffected by extra deck cards. So you can beat over the Liger Dancer they have. And then subsequently, if they make another Liger Dancer later in the game, you could use cards like Dracotail, Arthalion, or Big Art to bounce the Kaiju back to your hand, and then you can Kaiju their second Liger Dancer. So I think that's been a very good way to out double Liger. We play one copy of Light and Darkness Dragonlord in the side. This is mainly for going first. And generally, I'm either siding out of Philia Regis, or I'm siding out of the second Arthalion. Are generally the cards I choose to side out to accommodate this if I'm going first. Because this card, if you can play it, it's basically Appaloosa in dragon form. It's absolutely broken. So this card is very strong, especially when you're going first. And it gives you a way to deal with breakers like Evenly Matched, which is, I think, one of the few cards that this deck struggles against. Although you do have cards like Sanctifier that help out with that too. But I think having the Lad post game one, if you're going first, it just makes cards like Evenly almost pointless. We have 3 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust in the side deck. This is the brand new alternate art, again, also released in the Chronicles structure deck. Some of these alt arts just look beautiful. I'm so happy that Konami decided to go the extra mile and give us some pretty nice looking stuff. Then we have one Dark Ruler, one Feather Duster as just our thrust targets, obviously. And then to round out the remaining side deck is one copy of Branded Banishment. We need this for the Light and Darkness Dragonlord, so if we're going first, not only do we side into Dragonlord, but we side into Branded Banishment so we can make it. And then to round out the last card in the side deck is one copy of the Black Goat Laughs, which the structure deck does give you a copy of, which is great. And personally, you could argue that this could be a fusion duplication. However, since this is a 60 card deck, and this is not a pure branded list, it's branded Dracotail, and we're choosing to play a extended Dracotail package, I think playing fusion duplication for me has been kind of suboptimal and not as beneficial as I would like, because there are some cases where, like I mentioned earlier, you're just seeing hands that are producing Dracotail combo, and you're not seeing hands that bridge you into branded stuff necessarily, which means that even if you're getting hand trapped, you can't thrust for fusion dupe because you won't have a branded fusion in your graveyard to copy. So I just think Black Goat Laughs is the better card, like majority of the time, because it's not banking on you getting access to your branded engine. And I just think it's a very good card whether you're going first or second. It serves as a breaker for you. And I think it's also more generic. Like, I think Black Goat Laughs covers more threats than trying to go fusion dupe and copy branded fusion in certain cases, especially since that play I believe can get stopped by cards like Ghost Bell, which are huge in the format at the moment. At least something like if you go thrust for Black Goat, you know that you're not losing to Bell in that case. So that's my theory behind Black Goat in the side as a thrust target. But that's gonna wrap up my 60 card take on branded Dracotail post the Chronicles structure deck. If you duelists want to see updated combos and test hands, get this video to, we'll keep it simple, get it to 20 likes. And I will bring you duelists the updated combos and test hands for this deck. But honestly, I'm so glad that we got the structure. Really excited for the two brand new cards we got, which were the Fallen and the Virtuous. Quick play spell, and then like I mentioned, the new fusion monster, the dragon that devours the dogma. I think both of these cards are insanely powerful and definitely bolster the power level of the deck by quite a bit. So with that being said, this is Nick hitting that end phase. I appreciate you duelists as always. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Also join the Discord, linked in the description below. And with that being said, this is Nick hitting that end phase. Peace.